You're standing in a hallway, old house, too many windows. Everything creaks, even when you're not moving. There's a mirror on the wall. It's big and heavy. One of those old ones with the kind of frame you can't ever seem to clean right. Gilded like someone was trying to impress guests they didn't have. It just hangs there. Doesn't draw attention to itself, but you notice it anyway. You look in, and something about the reflection looks off. There's a smudge that wasn't there a second ago, a shift in the background. Nothing big, just enough to make you check twice. So you wipe the glass. The smudge comes back. You walk away, but something about it sticks with you. They say the mirror at the Myrtles was never covered after a death in the house. And that's not just a slip. That's the kind of thing that causes trouble. In old mourning practices, you always cover the mirrors, not for decoration, for protection. Because a mirror can hold on to something if you let it, especially in an old house that's already seen too much. People say the Myrtles Plantation is one of the most haunted houses in the country. You'll hear about the girl in the turban or the man that was shot on the stairs, the children, the dead wife. But ask anyone who's been there, and the thing they talk about the most? That mirror. I'm Papa G, and this is the Feral Folklorist, and today we're talking about haunted mirrors, southern ghosts, and what happens when something gets left open and stays that way. The Myrtles Plantation sits in St. Francisville, Louisiana. It is one of those places where the air feels heavy before you even get out of the car. The trees lean in close and hang over you like they're keeping some sort of secret. Because, this place has a reputation, a big one. There's ghost tours, documentaries, travel blogs that always include it in their most haunted lists. Because depending on who you ask, it's got anywhere from a dozen to 30 spirits roaming around. But if you really want to understand why people keep coming back to talk about this old house, you have to go back further than the ghost stories. Because before there was a plantation, even before it was called Louisiana, this land belonged to the Tunica people. It was indigenous land. And that part rarely makes it into the brochures, but it really should. Because when folks say a place is haunted, they're usually just talking about what happened after the white settlers got to this land. But some land doesn't need new trauma to be unsettled. It already remembers what happened there. The house itself was built in 1796 by General David Bradford. Now, if the name rings a bell, it's probably from the Whiskey Rebellion. Bradford was one of the guys who led the protest against the federal tax on distilled spirits. When things got too hot, he fled Pennsylvania and came down to the south to the Spanish territory that would eventually become Louisiana, and he reinvented himself there. He called the place Laurel Grove. Later on, he got a presidential pardon and brought his family down, built out the house, the land, his wealth, and like all wealth in the South at that time, it was built on the backs of enslaved people. None of that's a ghost story. That's just part most people skip over on their way to these hauntings. So after Bradford died, the property passed to his daughter Sarah Matilda and her husband, who was named Judge Clark Woodruff. That's when the stories start to turn a little bit darker. Now, Woodruff was a strict man. You can imagine he was. He was a judge. He was very ambitious and the kind of person who left an impression, but mostly bad. And during his time at the Myrtles, multiple family members died. His wife, Sarah, two of their daughters, Most likely it was the yellow fever. It tore through the South regularly back then, but as always, the longer time passes, the more room there is for speculation. After the Woodruffs, the house changed hands many times. In the 1830s, it went to the Sterling family, who turned it into the big Greek revival mansion you see today. That's when it got the fancy staircase and the marble mantels and all the trimmings that made it a showplace. Then came the Civil War. The Myrtles did not come out clean. Some say Union soldiers died on the grounds. Others say they just disappeared. Either way, the energy didn't reset. So by the late 1800s, the house had hosted generations of sorrow and sickness and violence and war. And it didn't stop there. The legends started to settle in. And one name took root more than any other. So you ask most people what they know about the Myrtles, and they'll mention a woman named Chloe. Now, here's the thing about Chloe. There's no official record of her. No census listing, no proof of death, nothing you'd call evidence. But usually folklore doesn't care about paperwork. So the story goes something like this. Chloe was an enslaved woman in the Woodruff household, and one day the judge caught her eavesdropping. Maybe it was out of curiosity. Maybe she was just wanting to keep in the know of the household. But as punishment, he actually had her ear cut off. And after that, she wore a green turban to cover the wound. She always had it on her. And some versions of the story say Chloe had been forced into a sexual relationship with Woodruff. Others called it an affair. But let's not sanitize what it was. At a time when there was slavery, this was more like coercion, plain and simple. There is no saying no to the owner of the plantation. So she was afraid she'd be cast out of the house, so Chloe tried to make herself indispensable. She baked a cake laced with oleander leaves. Oleander is poisonous, but it's very common in southern yards. And the plan, supposedly, was to make the family sick, not kill them, so that she could nurse them back to health and secure her place with them. But the plan failed. The judge's wife and 2 daughters died. Now, Woodruff, he did survive himself. The other slaves on the plantation were terrified of a punishment that would come at them collectively. So they hanged Chloe themselves and threw her body into the Mississippi River. Again, there's no historical record of this. But Chloe's story lives. Guests say they've seen a woman in a green head wrap walking the halls. Sometimes she's headless, sometimes she's whole. Now, ladies with earrings, they always have the left one go missing when they're in the house. People report feeling watched or hearing soft steps behind them or seeing movement in the glass. See, folklore made her real. Chloe may have never existed at all, but at this point, the story being repeated over and over throughout the generations is more powerful than a death certificate. Another story that stuck around is the shooting of William Drew Winter. He was married into the family, Sarah Sterling's husband. And in 1871, he was shot on the front porch. The story says he dragged himself inside and tried to make it up the stairs, but he collapsed on the 17th step. Now, every tour at the Myrtles pauses on that stair because people count the steps. Some swear they heard someone walking up, then stopping, always on the 17th. And then we come to the mirror, the one people talk about more than anything else. Now, old Southern mourning customs say you cover the mirrors when someone dies in the house. We covered this in another episode of the podcast because otherwise the soul might get caught. It might see itself and not know how to leave. This mirror at the Myrtles Plantation, it wasn't covered during a death. People have tried cleaning the glass, but the handprints come back. There's smudges that look like children pressing their palms to the glass. There are these reflections that seem to lag into time. And you can stand in front of the mirror and people swear that the faces that reflect back don't match the people who are standing in front of it. Now, photos taken in that long hallway show fog and shapes and other people that weren't present at the time. Some, of course, say it's Chloe. Others say it's Sarah and her girls. And a few believe the mirror just absorbed too much and had too much sorrow, too much trauma, and now it's holding on to all of it. But whatever it is, it's not passive. People say that mirror watches you. And when they get home, they cover up their own mirrors just in case. So magically speaking, let's talk about mirrors. Not the ones in your bathroom or over the mantle. I mean the ones that feel wrong. The ones you hesitate to look into at night. The ones that make a room feel like someone else is already in it. Now, I understand this sort of folklore because there have been times in the past where I have seen spirits, but only in the reflection in a mirror. I'm sure that other people can see them very clearly, but for me, that seems to be the only way I physically see them. I have felt spirits before, but occasionally I will get a glimpse of one walking by in the reflection of a mirror. You know, because in folk magic, mirrors aren't just decoration. They're tools. They're these thresholds. And sometimes that causes problems because mirrors can be portals across all sorts of magical traditions, Appalachian, Hoodoo, Creole, European. There's so many more. Mirrors show up again and again as spiritual entry points. Not metaphorically, literally. Entry points into another world. A mirror can hold energy, reflect it, and trap it or send it back. It all depends on how it's used and whether it's been left open. You'll hear people say mirrors are thin places, meaning the barrier between this world and the next is just a little bit weaker there. Now, they're not trying to be poetic. It's actually a mechanical thing. It means energy passes through differently. Spirits can lean into that. And if the conditions are right, something can get stuck there. That's why these old traditions say to cover the mirrors when someone dies. You're not hiding grief. You're sealing the room. Because if the soul is still near and it catches its own reflection before it's ready to go, it just might stay. Mirrors don't just hold energy. They bounce it. Now in Hoodoo, mirrors are often used for return to sender work. You take someone's name, someone who hexed you, crossed you, or they just won't leave you alone, and you place it behind a mirror. You fix that mirror with red brick dust, some herbs, your own spit, maybe even a nail, and you hide it behind a door or under a bed or facing the wall in the back of a closet. So the idea is whatever energy they send hits that mirror and goes right back to them. That's what makes mirrors powerful in both protection and curse work. They don't have intent on their own. They just do what they're made to do. Bounce, magnify, and hold. So if a room is thick with grief or rage and there's a mirror in the middle of it, that mirror is now part of the spell, whether anyone meant for it to be or not. So how does a mirror trap a spirit? Simple. Like we said, it's not sealed. So if someone dies in front of a mirror or near one, while emotions are really high and the air is charged, the mirror can grab hold of that especially if the death was sudden or it was violent or it had a lot of fear behind it. Now, here are some signs a mirror has been holding on too long, such as you keep cleaning it, but the smudges keep coming back, or you see movement in the glass when no one's around, or possibly pets won't go near it. You might even dream about it, or you feel off after standing in front of it too long. That's usually not your nerves. That's a spell that's still running. It's an energy. So if you think a mirror in your space is too active, there are things you can do. So to spiritually seal a mirror, you might clean it with Florida water or a mix of salt and rue. You would cover it with a black cloth is another thing. Let the black absorb what's in it, just as we know that when we go out in the summer sun, if you're wearing something light or white, you don't get as hot as when you wear black, because black absorbs. So that is the theory behind that. You cover it with a black cloth. You can wrap red thread around the frame 3 times. You might place a nail or key behind it for a spiritual lockdown. And if you've got some, sprinkle black salt or crushed eggshell at the base of the mirror. And you tell the mirror, you reflect nothing but light. You hold nothing that's mine. You are sealed. Do that and it should settle down. And if it doesn't, the mirror might not be the kind you just keep around. It might be time to take it somewhere else. Now, whatever you do, don't break it. That doesn't fix anything. All you've done is turn one problem into 7. Now, many people say that breaking a mirror on purpose does not create 7 years of bad luck. It usually has to be an accident. So let's work some magic in mirrors, because not all mirror magic is about defense. There's scrying. Gazing into a dark mirror to see visions or speak with spirits has been around a long time. That's not superstition. That is focused trance work across many different cultures. It takes practice and it's not for show. You don't scry in a room with bad energy. You don't do it just to see what's there. Mirrors are also used to amplify intention. You can place candles in front of a mirror to double the light or double the reach of the work. Now that's simple, effective, and pretty traditional. But again, if you're using a mirror in spell work, it needs to be clean, physically and energetically. Otherwise, whatever it's been holding will mix in, and that's when trouble starts. So let's bring it back to the plantation. Now that mirror at the Myrtles, if it really was left uncovered after a death, and in a house with that much history, probably was, that would be enough to cause a spiritual hold. So you add in grief, fear, trauma, whatever else that house has seen, and you're looking at a perfect storm, a spiritual sponge that never got wrung out. Is it Chloe? Maybe. It could be the children. It could be someone we have no idea who it is. Or is it just years of emotional residue caught behind glass that no one ever shut down properly? Whatever it is, people feel it. They see things. They avoid standing in front of it. Not necessarily because they believe in ghosts, because their gut told them to. And that's good enough. The thing about the Myrtles is it's not one big ghost story. It's not a place where someone jumps out of the wall or they rattle chains in the attic. It's more like the house itself is holding something. Like it's full of these stories that never really got told right. And every now and then, one of them presses through. You hear about the big ones, Chloe and the 17th step, the woman in the mirror. But the stories that stick with people are smaller, quieter. You don't see them in the brochures. You just hear about them after someone's been there. Now, more than one visitor has left the Myrtles with only one earring. It's always the left one. Doesn't matter how secure the backing is. Doesn't matter if they weren't even in that part of the house. It just vanishes. Sometimes it turns up later in a place that doesn't make sense, like a suitcase pocket or a jacket they didn't even bring with them. Other times it's just gone. So there's no jump scare here, no ghost grabbing you. It's just this signature of something from the past, a sort of a quiet kind of haunting. And yet people think this is linked to Chloe because of the story about her ear. Maybe it's a way of saying, I was there. There's a story that comes up in private tours, one the guides don't always tell unless you ask them. There's a young girl seen at the foot of the bed, not running or playing. She's just standing there staring at you. To me, that's creepy enough. And a lot of people say she was probably around 10 from the looks of her. She wears very old-fashioned clothing and no shoes. She doesn't say a word. She doesn't blink. She just watches. And the second you look away, she's gone. No one has a good explanation for her. It's not Chloe. It's not the Woodruff children. Just someone who never really left and doesn't want anything, except maybe to be seen once more before you forget her again. So let's go back to the 17th step, because this one's more famous, but it still gets mentioned by people who swear they didn't believe any of this until they felt it for themselves. Now, when William Winter was shot on the porch and dragged himself up the steps, he did collapse on the 17th step, they say. And that's the total of the story. Whether it happened that way or not, the house has kept that number. Visitors say they hear it. These footsteps on wood, slow and deliberate, and they always stop on the 17th step and never go beyond that, and they never go back down. So it's not loud. You wouldn't catch it over a conversation that was happening. But if you're alone, you hear it very clearly. And if you don't, and you're staring at the staircase, most people stop to count them anyway. So we're going to go back to the mirror. About that mirror. People don't always talk about seeing something in the mirror. They just say they stood in front of it too long, and it made them feel strange, or they didn't feel like themselves afterwards. Now, one guest said her reflection didn't blink when she knew she had blinked. It just stood there watching like it was waiting. It was like it wasn't her reflection. It was another version of her. Another person swore she saw a second hallway behind her in the glass, not the one she was standing in. Same mirror, but different house. And one person years ago said she leaned in close to check her lipstick, and the handprint fogged up right in front of her face. The palm of a child right where her lips were. It was like the mirror breathed back. There's a rumor among the staff, not officially acknowledged, just passed around, that if you open a door in the hallway, close it right away, even if you're just peeking in. Because once someone didn't, and the next morning every door was cracked the exact same way, like someone walked through during the night just looking into each room. There were no alarms, no footage on the cameras, no explanation, just doors all open to the exact same angle. They say that many members of staff carry something protective, whether it be salt or iron jewelry or some sort of religious medallion or something, because it's not necessarily that they believe in ghosts. You don't have to believe in them to act like you've seen one. You just need to be the person who cleaned that mirror twice and still saw handprints the next morning. It's enough to convince you to carry protection. Now, let's close with 2 pieces of practical spell work. We're going to do one to seal a mirror and one to shield yourself when walking into a space that might already have something in it. Here's a spell to spiritually seal a mirror, to shut down the energy when it feels like it's been holding on to too much and feels off when you look into it. You're going to need a black cloth large enough to cover the mirror, some red string or thread, and some Florida water or some sort of strong cleansing wash. It can be salt water or rue tea or camphor water. And some sort of object that's made of iron, like a nail or a key. And if you do have it or can get it, black salt or crushed eggshell. And to cleanse the mirror physically is the first thing you do. You clean it like you're doing house cleaning, the glass and the frame. Wipe it down with your spiritual cleanser while speaking aloud. This mirror reflects only what is mine to see, nothing else. Then you cover it completely in the black cloth. Wrap the red thread around the mirror 3 times and knot it on the 3rd time around. Then you tuck the iron object behind the mirror or tape it to the back. And if you want a little extra insurance, sprinkle a little black salt at the base or along the sill of the mirror where the frame meets the glass. So the timing, do it at night, preferably on a waning moon, especially if someone has recently passed in your family or a close friend, or if someone has been in your home that had a lot of negativity. And you're going to leave that mirror covered for at least 1 full moon cycle. If it still feels wrong after that, don't uncover it. Move it out of the house or store it face down in a closet until you can get it out of the house. Now, the next is a protection charm for visiting haunted houses and to shield yourself when entering spiritually charged places like historic homes or graveyards or even places with bad memories. So what you're going to need is a pinch of salt, a little dried rosemary or mugwort, a small white cloth, and a black thread or ribbon. And you're going to lay the herbs and the salt in the cloth and say, "What clings, release. What waits, pass by. Let no spirit follow. Let no harm lie." And what this is basically saying is nothing is going to hold on to me. Nothing is going to latch onto me when I am in this space. And you tie the bundle shut with the black thread and you keep it on your person, like your pocket, or a woman might put it in her bra or shoe. It doesn't matter. Just don't leave it behind. Take it to that place you're going, that historic site or that graveyard. And when you get home, you can then bury that charm, or some people burn it or they toss it in running water. But often people will take it to a crossroads. The theory is if a spirit did try to get a hold of part of you or latch onto you, that instead that bag pulled them into the spirit of the bag. And now you need to get that bag off of your property. So it's a temporary bag, sort of like a mojo bag, but not one you keep to pray over. It's one you use to absorb negativity or a spirit that may be trying to latch onto you. You don't have to believe in ghosts for this to work. You just need to respect the energy that gathers where trauma happened. You've been listening to The Feral Folklorist, where, as we have seen, reflections sometimes hold memories. And sometimes what is looking back at you is not what you expect. Next time we're walking under blue glass and into the branches, we're talking about bottle trees, what they are and what they're meant to catch. So until then, cover your mirrors, just in case. If you'd like to hear the after the show episode where I go deeper into the folklore, spill a little extra dirt, and sometimes rant just a bit, consider becoming a patron over on my Patreon at patreon.com/PapaG. You can find the official site for the podcast at feralfolklorist.com. And if you need spell supplies for any of the workings we talk about on the show, our metaphysical shop, Aromages Botanica, has been weaving magic for over 25 years. That's over at aromages.com. And finally, don't forget about our digital magazine, Folklorium, for articles, herbal profiles, spells, and a little bit of folkloric fiction at folklorium.com.